He controlled an entire city with a single phone call, but he had never met a woman who refused to be impressed by his name. The night began like any other expensive evening in downtown Chicago, with soft music filling an elegant restaurant, crystal glasses reflecting the warm lights, and guests dressed in carefully chosen designer outfits. But for Elena Carter, it was supposed to be a night of hope. After months of focusing on work and responsibilities, she had finally agreed to go on a date. She wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could meet someone who valued kindness over appearances. Instead, the evening became a reminder of everything she had learned to protect herself from. Daniel Whitmore arrived late, barely offering an apology. Throughout dinner, he spoke more about himself than he ever asked about Elena. He judged small details about her life, made assumptions about her choices, and treated the conversation like an opportunity to prove his own importance. Elena listened quietly at first, hoping the night would improve. She had always believed in giving people a chance, but eventually, she realized that staying was not kindness. Sometimes, respecting yourself meant knowing when to leave. She calmly placed her napkin on the table, thanked him for the evening, and stood up. She did not create a scene. She did not insult him back. She simply chose her own peace. As Elena walked toward the exit, she passed through the main dining area where another man sat watching everything unfold. Alessandro Romano was not someone people ignored. The 45-year-old white mafia boss had built a reputation as one of the most influential figures in the city. People knew his name. They knew his power. They knew that behind his calm expression was a man who rarely showed emotion. But that night, Alessandro was not watching because of Daniel's behavior. He was watching because of Elena's response. He had seen many people become angry when they were disrespected. He had seen others remain silent because they feared confrontation. Elena was different. She walked away with dignity. She did not need an audience. She did not need anyone to defend her. She simply knew her own worth. Alessandro found that unusual. In his world, almost everyone wanted something from him. They wanted connections, opportunities, or approval. But Elena did not even know who he was. She passed by him without hesitation, carrying herself with quiet confidence. For reasons he could not explain, that moment stayed in his mind. Outside the restaurant, Elena took a deep breath and looked at the city lights. She thought the worst part of the night was finally over. She had no idea that someone powerful had noticed the way she handled disappointment. She had no idea that the man everyone feared had just met the one person who did not care about his reputation. And Alessandro Romano had no idea that the woman who walked away from a terrible date would soon challenge everything he believed about control, trust, and the meaning of true strength. The next morning, Elena Carter woke up hoping the disappointment from the previous night would slowly fade away. She had experienced enough moments where people judged her before knowing her story, and she had learned not to let one bad encounter define her confidence. For Elena, walking away from that restaurant was not about proving Daniel Whitmore wrong. It was about proving to herself that she respected her own boundaries. Her life had taught her that not every person deserved access to her time, her energy, or her kindness. Elena was a 32-year-old black woman who had built her life through patience and determination. She worked as a freelance event designer, creating memorable experiences for clients who wanted every detail to feel meaningful. She was not someone who searched for attention. She preferred letting her work speak for itself. Her small apartment reflected her personality. It was simple, organized, and filled with reminders of the dreams she continued working toward. A notebook on her desk contained ideas for future projects. Photos from successful events covered one wall. Every item represented years of effort and quiet progress. Elena had faced disappointment before, but she refused to become bitter. She believed that difficult experiences could teach valuable lessons if a person was willing to learn from them. Across the city, Alessandro Romano was thinking about the same night for a very different reason. The ruthless Don had spent years surrounded by people who carefully chose their words around him. His reputation created distance before he even entered a room. People often showed respect because of his position, not because they truly understood him. Alessandro was used to conversations that had hidden intentions. Genuine honesty was rare in his world. But Elena's reaction at the restaurant stayed with him. She had no idea who he was. She did not know his influence or his reputation. She had no reason to impress him. That was exactly why her actions caught his attention. Alessandro asked one of his assistants a simple question. He wanted to know who she was. The information he received surprised him. Elena was not someone looking for an easy opportunity. She had built her career step by step, often taking difficult assignments and finding creative solutions when others gave up. People described her as reliable, thoughtful, and professional. They mentioned that she treated everyone with respect, from clients to employees. Alessandro had expected to find a person who was simply different from others he knew. Instead, he discovered someone who represented qualities he rarely saw anymore. Meanwhile, Elena continued her normal routine, unaware that a powerful man had become curious about her story. She focused on her next project, preparing designs, answering emails, and moving forward. She did not think about the restaurant anymore. To her, that chapter was closed. But for Alessandro, it was only beginning. He could not understand why a brief moment with a stranger had affected him. He had met countless people throughout his life, yet very few had shown strength without trying to prove they were strong. Elena had not challenged his power. She had simply ignored it because she never cared about it. And that was something Alessandro Romano could not easily forget. Alessandro Romano had spent years building a life where every decision was calculated and every emotion carefully controlled. As the Ruthless Don, he was known for his influence, his intelligence, and his ability to remain calm when others lost their composure. People around him believed they understood him because they saw the confidence, the authority, and the reputation. But very few people ever saw the quiet moments when Alessandro questioned the life he had created. His world was filled with meetings, responsibilities, and people who approached him with hidden expectations. Almost everyone wanted something from him. Almost everyone saw the title before they saw the person. That was why Elena Carter stayed in his thoughts. She was different because she had no interest in his status. She did not know his name. She did not know the power connected to it. She only knew what she experienced, and she trusted her own judgment. A few days after their encounter, Alessandro found himself returning to the same restaurant where he had first noticed her. He did not go there because he expected to see her. He went because he wanted to understand why that moment had affected him. As he sat quietly, he observed the people around him. He noticed how many conversations were built around appearances and advantages. He noticed how often people changed their behavior depending on who entered the room. It reminded him of everything he had grown tired of. Then he saw Elena again. She was not looking for attention. She was meeting with a client to discuss an upcoming event project. She spoke with confidence, listened carefully, and treated everyone around her with the same respect. Alessandro watched as she explained her ideas. She was passionate about creating experiences that made people feel welcomed. She did not talk about success as a way to impress others. She talked about success as a way to create something meaningful. For the first time in a long time, Alessandro saw someone who measured achievement differently. After the meeting ended, he approached her. Elena recognized him from the restaurant, but did not react the way most people did when they discovered his identity. She simply looked at him and waited for him to speak. "I wanted to apologize for what happened that night," Alessandro said. Elena studied his expression carefully. She was surprised because she did not expect someone like him to care about a situation that seemed insignificant to everyone else. "You do not have to apologize for someone else's choices," she replied calmly. "People reveal who they are through their actions." Those words stayed with Alessandro. He was used to people trying to please him, but Elena was simply honest. Their conversation continued longer than either of them expected. They talked about work, life, and the different ways people judge each other. Elena did not try to change Alessandro, and Alessandro did not try to impress Elena. For a brief moment, they were just two people having a genuine conversation. That was something Alessandro rarely experienced. When Elena finally left, Alessandro remained there quietly. He realized that the woman who walked away from a terrible night had given him something unexpected. She had reminded him that trust could not be demanded, respect could not be purchased, and the most meaningful connections often began when nobody was trying to gain anything. For the first time in years, Alessandro Romano was not thinking about power. He was thinking about a person who had made him see the world differently. The conversation between Alessandro Romano and Elena Carter stayed in his mind longer than he expected. For a man who had spent years making decisions quickly and moving forward without hesitation, the simple honesty of one woman had created a moment of reflection he could not ignore. Alessandro had built a reputation around control. He controlled his business, his schedule, and the image people saw when they looked at him. But Elena had shown him something different. She had not tried to challenge him or impress him. She had simply been herself, and that was exactly what made her impossible to forget. Meanwhile, Elena continued living her life the same way she always had. She did not expect Alessandro to contact her again. She did not think about his influence or his reputation. To her, he was simply a man who apologized when he did not have to, and that small action showed a level of awareness she respected. Her focus remained on her career and the upcoming event project she was managing. Elena had spent years creating opportunities for herself, and she refused to let anyone make her feel like her success depended on someone else. A few days later, their paths crossed again at a business gathering where Elena was presenting her ideas for a new community event. Alessandro attended because of his involvement with several local organizations. When he entered the room, many people immediately noticed him. Conversations became quieter. People adjusted their behavior. His presence changed the atmosphere. But Elena reacted differently. She simply continued preparing her presentation. She did not rush to greet him. She did not try to gain his attention. Alessandro noticed that immediately. He had spent years surrounded by people who changed their personalities depending on who was nearby. Elena remained exactly the same. During the presentation, Elena explained her vision. She talked about creating events where people felt welcomed, regardless of their background or social position. She believed the smallest details could make someone feel valued. Alessandro listened carefully. He realized that her approach to life was completely different from his own. He had always believed strength came from having influence. Elena believed strength came from making a positive impact. After the presentation, Alessandro approached her. "You have a different way of seeing things," he said. Elena smiled slightly. "Maybe because I have learned that people are more important than appearances." Her words were simple, but they carried meaning. Alessandro understood that she was not criticizing him. She was sharing a belief she had built through experience. Their conversation continued as they walked through the event space. They discussed ambition, challenges, and the expectations people placed on them. Elena admitted that she had often been underestimated because people focused on what they saw first instead of who she was. Alessandro admitted that people often feared him before they ever knew him. For the first time, both realized they carried something similar. They had both been judged by an image created by others. The difference was that Elena had learned to rise above those assumptions, while Alessandro had spent years using his reputation as protection. As the evening ended, Alessandro watched Elena leave with the same quiet confidence she had shown from the beginning. He realized something important. The woman who refused to be impressed by his name was the first person in years who made him want to become someone worthy of respect. And Elena, without realizing it, had started changing the man everyone believed could never change. Alessandro Romano had spent years believing that distance was the safest way to live. The more powerful he became, the more carefully he guarded every part of himself. People saw the expensive suits, the respected name, and the confidence that filled every room he entered. They rarely saw the man who sat alone after long days, wondering whether anyone truly knew him. But recently, one person had started changing the way he looked at the world. Elena Carter had never treated him like a title. She treated him like a person. That difference stayed with him. While Alessandro continued his responsibilities, he found himself remembering small details about Elena. He remembered the way she listened when others spoke. He remembered how she remained calm when she had every reason to be upset. Most importantly, he remembered that she never once tried to use his influence for her own advantage. For someone who had spent years surrounded by people with hidden motives, that honesty felt rare. Meanwhile, Elena continued building her career with the same determination she had always carried. She was preparing a major community event that would bring together local businesses, families, and organizations. The project was important because it represented everything she believed in. She wanted people to feel included and appreciated, not judged by their background or position. But creating something meaningful was never easy. Some people questioned whether Elena had enough experience to lead such a large project. Others focused on her appearance before they considered her talent. Elena had faced those attitudes before. She knew that some people would always look for reasons to underestimate others. But she also knew that confidence was not something someone else could give or take away. One afternoon, Alessandro visited the event location while preparations were underway. He saw Elena moving through the space, solving problems, encouraging her team, and making sure every person felt heard. She was not acting like someone trying to prove herself. She was simply doing what she believed was right. Alessandro watched quietly as one of the workers thanked her for making them feel valued. That moment revealed something he had not expected. Elena's strength did not come from demanding attention. It came from the way she treated people when nobody was watching. Later, Alessandro approached her and offered support for the project. Elena looked at him carefully before responding. "I appreciate the offer, but I do not want someone to fix things for me," she said. "I want the chance to build something through my own work." Her words surprised him, but they also earned his respect. Many people would have accepted help without hesitation. Elena wanted partnership, not rescue. Alessandro understood the difference. "That is exactly why I respect you," he replied. "You do not want power. You want fairness." For a moment, neither of them said anything. The city continued moving around them, but the conversation felt separate from everything else. Alessandro realized that Elena was not changing because of his world. He was changing because of hers. She reminded him that influence meant little if it was not used with purpose. And Elena began to see that behind the reputation and the carefully built image was a man who was slowly learning how to trust again. Alessandro Romano had always believed that people revealed their true character when they were given power. In his world, influence could open doors, create opportunities, and change outcomes with a single decision. But Elena Carter had shown him something he never expected. Real strength was not about controlling every situation. It was about knowing when to listen, when to understand, and when to use your position to help others grow. As the weeks passed, Alessandro continued observing Elena's work on the community event. He saw how she handled pressure with patience and how she treated every person around her with the same level of respect. She remembered names, noticed small details, and made people feel like their contributions mattered. To Alessandro, those moments were more powerful than any display of authority he had witnessed. Meanwhile, Elena started noticing changes in Alessandro as well. The man everyone described as distant and impossible to understand was beginning to show another side of himself. He asked questions instead of giving orders. He listened instead of assuming he already had the answers. Small changes that others might have missed were obvious to Elena because she had always paid attention to actions more than words. One evening, after a long day of preparations, Alessandro and Elena sat outside the event venue overlooking the city lights. The atmosphere was quiet, giving them a rare moment away from expectations and responsibilities. Alessandro admitted something he had never shared with many people. He said that for most of his life, he believed trust was a weakness. He thought keeping people at a distance was the only way to protect himself. Elena listened without judgment. She understood that everyone carried experiences that shaped the way they saw the world. "Protecting yourself is important," Elena said softly. "But sometimes the walls we build to keep people away also prevent the right people from reaching us." Alessandro looked at her, realizing how different her perspective was from his own. She was not trying to change him through criticism. She was simply offering a different way to see things. Her words stayed with him because they came from understanding, not from wanting anything in return. At the same time, Elena shared her own struggles. She explained that being underestimated had been one of the hardest challenges she faced. People often noticed what made her different before they noticed what made her capable. But instead of allowing those opinions to define her, she chose to focus on the people who believed in her work. Alessandro respected that more than he could explain. He had spent years surrounded by people who wanted to appear strong. Elena was the first person he met who was strong without needing to prove it. As the event finally approached, Alessandro made a decision. He would support Elena's vision, but he would not take control of it. He would create opportunities without taking away her independence. It was a small choice, but for him, it represented something much larger. The man who had always believed power meant having the final say was beginning to understand that true leadership meant allowing others to shine. Elena looked at the finished preparations and smiled, knowing the project represented more than an event. It represented growth, trust, and the beginning of something neither of them expected. And Alessandro Romano realized that the woman who once walked away from a disappointing night had become the person who helped him discover a better version of himself. The day of the community event arrived with a feeling of anticipation that filled every corner of the venue. For Elena Carter, it was not just another project. It was proof that years of dedication, patience, and belief in herself had created something meaningful. She walked through the beautifully prepared space, checking every detail, greeting every member of her team, and making sure everyone felt appreciated. She had always believed that success was not measured only by the final result, but by the way people felt while creating it. Alessandro Romano watched from a distance, noticing the difference between Elena and everyone else he had encountered. She did not seek recognition. She created it for others. The event attracted important guests, business leaders, and members of the community. Many of them knew Alessandro's name, and his presence naturally attracted attention. But this time, Alessandro did not want the focus to be on him. He wanted people to see Elena's work. For years, he had been the person standing at the center of every room. That day, he chose to stand beside someone else and let her achievements speak for themselves. However, not everyone was comfortable with the changes happening around him. Some people from Alessandro's circle questioned why he was supporting Elena's vision instead of taking control of the opportunity himself. They believed his influence should always come first. Alessandro listened quietly, but for the first time, he did not accept their way of thinking. He understood something he had ignored for years. Power was not valuable because it made people follow you. Power was valuable when it gave others the chance to succeed. Meanwhile, Elena faced her own challenge. A few guests still underestimated her because of her background and assumed her success came from Alessandro's support rather than her own talent. She heard their comments, but she refused to let them distract her. Instead of defending herself with anger, she continued doing what she always did. She let her work show the truth. Alessandro noticed her response. He expected disappointment or frustration, but Elena remained calm. People will always create their own opinions, she told him. The only thing I can control is the person I choose to be. Those words reminded Alessandro of how much she had changed his perspective. Before meeting Elena, he believed respect came from reputation. Now he understood that respect came from consistency, honesty, and the way someone treated others when there was nothing to gain. As the event continued, the atmosphere changed. People who had doubted Elena began recognizing her ability, her leadership, and the genuine care she showed toward everyone involved. The same people who once looked past her were now listening to her ideas. Alessandro stood quietly nearby, realizing he was witnessing something more powerful than influence. He was witnessing earned respect. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the venue became peaceful again, Elena looked around at everything they had accomplished. Alessandro joined her, but this time there was no distance between them. There was no powerful man and no woman who needed approval. There were simply two people who had learned from each other. Alessandro understood that the woman who refused to be impressed by his name had taught him the most important lesson of his life. True strength was not about making others recognize your importance. It was about recognizing the importance of others. After the success of the community event, life began to feel different for both Alessandro Romano and Elena Carter. The world around them had not changed overnight, but the way they saw each other had. For Alessandro, the experience had become a turning point. He had spent years believing that keeping people at a distance was the only way to protect himself. But Elena had shown him that trust was not a weakness. It was a choice that required courage. She had never tried to change him through pressure or expectation. She simply showed him another way to see the world. Elena noticed the difference as well. The man she first met at the restaurant seemed almost impossible to understand. He carried the weight of his reputation everywhere he went. But over time, she discovered that behind the title and the carefully controlled image was someone who was capable of reflection and growth. Alessandro began making decisions differently. He listened more carefully during meetings. He considered how his choices affected people around him. He started asking questions before offering solutions. These changes were small, but they revealed something important. The man who once believed control was the answer was learning the value of connection. One afternoon, Elena invited Alessandro to visit a new project she was developing. It was a space designed to help young entrepreneurs and local businesses create opportunities within the community. Alessandro walked through the building quietly, observing the energy around him. He saw people working together, sharing ideas, and supporting one another. It reminded him of something he had almost forgotten. A strong community was not built by one powerful person. It was built by many people believing they mattered. You created this because you wanted people to feel seen, Alessandro said. Elena smiled. Everyone wants to feel like they belong somewhere. Sometimes people just need someone to believe in them first. Her words stayed with him. Alessandro had spent years surrounded by people who feared disappointing him. Elena was surrounded by people who trusted her because she made them feel valued. That difference showed him the kind of leader he wanted to become. However, change was not always easy. Some people close to Alessandro struggled to understand why he was becoming less focused on reputation and more focused on purpose. They believed his new approach made him different from the man they had always known. Alessandro accepted that not everyone would understand his choices. For the first time, he was not trying to prove himself to anyone. He was making decisions based on what he believed was right. Elena also faced a moment of reflection. She realized that Alessandro was no longer the distant man she first encountered. He was someone who was learning, listening, and allowing himself to be understood. But she also knew the importance of maintaining her independence. She did not want to become part of his world by losing herself. She wanted a connection where both people could remain who they were. Alessandro respected that more than anything. He did not want Elena because she needed him. He admired her because she never did. As the evening lights covered the city, the two stood together outside the project building, looking at everything they had helped create. They were from completely different worlds, but they had discovered something unexpected. Sometimes the person who changes your life is not the one who completes you. It is the one who helps you become more honest about who you already are. Months passed, and the city slowly began to see Alessandro Romano in a different way. The man who had once been known only by his reputation was now recognized for the changes he was creating. He still carried the same confidence and discipline that had defined him for years, but something about him had changed. He no longer measured success by how much influence he held. He measured it by the positive impact he could leave behind. Elena Carter continued building her own path, growing her projects, and inspiring the people around her. She remained the same woman Alessandro first noticed at the restaurant. She was thoughtful, determined, and unwilling to let the opinions of others define her worth. Her success did not come from standing beside someone powerful. It came from the work she had always been willing to do. Alessandro admired that more than anything. One evening, the two returned to the same restaurant where their unexpected journey had started. The place looked almost the same, with warm lights reflecting across the tables and quiet conversations filling the room. But they were not the same people who had entered that place months earlier. Elena looked around and remembered the night she decided to leave a situation that did not respect her. At the time, she believed it was simply a difficult moment she needed to move past. She never imagined that walking away would lead her to someone who would challenge the way she viewed trust and connection. Alessandro looked across the table and realized something even more important. The woman in front of him had never asked him to become someone else. She had never demanded that he forget his past or pretend to be perfect. She had simply shown him that a different future was possible. "You know what surprised me the most about you?" Alessandro said quietly. Elena smiled. "What?" "You were never impressed by what everyone else noticed." Elena looked at him with understanding. "Because a person is more than what people see first." Those words reflected everything they had learned together. Alessandro had discovered that respect could not be created through fear or status. Elena had discovered that opening her heart did not mean losing her independence. They had both changed, not because one person saved the other, but because they challenged each other to grow. Outside the restaurant, the city continued moving around them. People rushed through the streets, chasing their own dreams and carrying their own stories. Alessandro and Elena stood together, knowing that their lives had taken an unexpected direction. The man who once believed he needed control over everything had learned the value of trust. The woman who once believed disappointment was easier to accept than hope had learned that some people could surprise her. Their journey was never about one person having power over another. It was about two people from different worlds discovering that understanding could bridge any distance. Alessandro Romano had spent years building walls around himself, believing they protected him. Elena Carter showed him that the strongest person was not the one who needed no one. It was the one who had the courage to let the right people in. And that night, beneath the city lights, they both understood something they would never forget. True connection was not found in control, but in the freedom to choose each other with respect.